Welcome back to the Gillett Health podcast, where we give you tools to develop a balanced approach for health. I'm Dr. Kyle Gillett. And speaking of tools to give you a balanced approach for health, my guest today is Diana, a sports dietitian. And you have been with the clinic, we were just talking, for 3+ years now. That's pretty crazy.
That's awesome. Time flies.
Yeah. So obviously diet is one of, if not the most pillar of health.
Mm-hmm.
Most important pillar of health. But I guess one of the interesting things about diet is I've noticed that with myself and Maddie, my wife, and a lot of other people, they get more and more into diet and they have these health phases when they get into their 20s and 30s. And, you know, Maddie mentioned to me the other day, if I did it again, instead of doing speech pathology, I would do nutrition and dietetics. But I guess, how did you get on that board early and decide to go into this?
Gosh, man, I reluctantly did, to be honest. When I was younger, I really thought I was going to go to vet school. I was all about helping animals, worked at a lot wildlife rescue when I was younger. But all along the way, I was competing in various sports. I was bouncing from season to season. And my mom is a retired outpatient dietitian. She worked at the VA hospital local. And, I had in my mind, it's like, I don't want to follow in either of my parents' footsteps. I want to chart my own path and do my own thing. Fast forward to my undergrad when I was at Virginia Tech. I was a freshman there. Went in as a biology major on the path towards vet school. And it was my spring semester when I found out that Virginia Tech was one of the few collegiate school or few universities that had a full-time dietitian working in the athletics department. And at the time, there were maybe a handful in the entire country. It just wasn't a thing yet. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Let me just reach out to her, see what happens. And so I reached out to her and we connected. I started working with her instantly. And I immediately said, oh my God, you can get paid to do this? Like working behind the scenes with athletes, doing this new career field that blends my two passions, which is health and nutrition science with exercise, being an athlete. It wasn't a thing until it was. And so I changed my major and went straight into nutrition and psychology and never looked back.
That's good. One thing that I guess you've done that a lot of dietitians don't is you've gotten the sports dietitian certification, CPSDA, something like that.
Yep, CSSD.
Yep. And I don't know if that's similar to the obesity medicine certification a lot of doctors add on.
Yeah.
I know I was one of the first ones to add on that kind of second, much easier board certification.
Yeah.
But how do you see that playing a role? Because I see these different types of dietitians that are.
Yep. And there are different specialties, right? Like it's really hard to be an expert at everything. Just like you can't be an orthopedic surgeon and a cardiologist at the same time. That would be, I don't know anybody who could do that. Nutrition's the same way. Nutrition science continues to evolve and change. And so as you go through your career, you might start in like general nutrition, the health and wellness space, or you start in the hospital, or you're just
a NICU dietitian.
Yeah, responding to a very specific population, whether it's transplant or cardiology or NICU with pediatrics. So there are so many different avenues that dietitians can take, but this specialty really was essential, and it came about really early in my career. And still, every 5 years, I have to retake the test and recertify, which is a big pain in the butt, but it is what it is, because it is still a relatively new certification. But it does kind of distinguish you as a dietitian to say, hey, this person now has the most basic knowledge and specialty understanding of sports. And that now includes all kinds of performance, where I working with a lot of tactical athletes. And that's different from sport, because in any sport, you have very, very clear objective and schedule. Football, for example. I know exactly when the games are. I know when practice is. I know how long it is. There's enough literature about it to generally understand how to adapt nutrition for that sport. Whereas like if you work in the first responder space or in the military space, it's every day, all the time, and there is no set schedule. So being able to translate that sport knowledge to that new space that is kind of coming around now really is the next frontier in performance nutrition.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I guess one thing that I found interesting with your practice is that obviously you've emphasized athlete and professional nutrition specific goals,
Mm-hmm.
but you've also incorporated some of what I see in this, dichotomy essentially between people going off into functional
Yeah.
dietetics or being functional dietitians,
Yep.
which there's of course exceptions, but usually it's just a ton of supplements and avoiding certain no foods.
Yeah.
And then more of a traditional dietitian to
Yeah.
where, you might go to your GP and they have a dietitian there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also kind of very cookie cutter. And that your ethos obviously meshed well with our individualized medicine goal.
Yeah.
But for other people that are either seeking out dietitians or looking to become a nutrition expert, even if they're not a dietitian, what advice can you give them to kind of avoid those pitfalls?
Yeah. I think that it's really important, no matter what field of science you go into, you have a growth mindset. If I had the same mindset and knowledge that I had when I started my career 15 or so years ago, my practice wouldn't look the way it does now. I'd be stuck in the same generic sports nutrition stuff. So you have to evolve with the population. Yes, functional nutrition, functional medicine is really catching a lot of steam, especially right now.
Yep. You give the people what they want.
Yeah. And you can notice, like, you can go off the deep end really quick by overwhelming patients with a slew of supplements and getting them on various elimination diets and starting to create this food fear with them. So
Make a patient for life.
Yeah.
As long as it makes me money, I don't care.
Exactly. And there may be practitioners or people who do that. And I try to come at this with a really realistic standpoint where I am knowledgeable and continuing to grow knowledge in that space and blending it with what I know in performance nutrition and bringing it to real life. Because, and this gets into the individual stuff, not all that applies to everybody. That really gets into if I'm seeing somebody one-on-one and they're really coming in with these issues and it's beyond the space of what general performance nutrition can do. There's only so much creatine, protein powder, and macro adjusting that I can do to somebody before it's just not enough. I need to truly fix what the root cause is. And that's when I may need to dip my hand into the functional nutrition knowledge that I have and clear out the gut stuff or figure out what's happening with the malabsorption or why they're not responding to something or why their recovery is so crappy or why they're not sleeping. It may need that extra touch. But that's when it gets to like my relationship with that patient and making sure that they trust me enough to really stick it out. Because if you put somebody on any kind of functional nutrition path, you have to give them more than just one session. That's you're looking at several weeks commitment to really seeing it through with that patient. And if they're not ready for that, then they're not ready for that intervention.
I love your pre-meal bitters plan.
Mm-hmm.
Tell people about that and why you might do that instead of a supplement.
So a lot of times with gut stuff, you start with the basics. And if somebody's having poor digestion or if they are, complaining of pains or gas or whether it's burping or flatulence, whatever it might be, I look at the gut as north to south, right? Digestion starts in the mouth and goes all the way down. And each section of the gut has a different purpose. And a lot of people that I work with aren't doing the basics. They're rushing through the meal. They're standing or they're on the go and they're eating as part of society. But that's also where things start. Like if you're swallowing large chunks of food, your gut has to work harder to break it down so it can be absorbed and used by your body. Now you're creating more potential for that food to ferment longer in your gut, causing more gas and bloating, more cramps, more discomfort. And again, no supplement's going to fix that. You have to fix your behavior. So I often tell people, if you're having some of these issues, one intervention could be the bitters. It could be just
Apple cider vinegar,
apple cider
ginger.
vinegar. Absolutely.
Can it be anything bitter or what?
Yeah, I mean,
Lemon?
there are bitter supplements you can have, but I like just starting with food stuff. So like apple cider vinegar to try to stimulate the pancreatic juices, to try to make sure you have enough acidity in your stomach to break down your food, break down protein especially.
How long before a meal can you do that? Like, what's the maximum window?
You could do it like right before a meal.
Can you do
Sometimes
it
I'll
20
say,
minutes?
I would
10?
I would say 10 probably. Knowing that in real life, most people aren't going to take apple cider vinegar 20 minutes before a meal anyway. They probably do it right before they eat. And this is a strategy I've done for myself as well as I've worked through various GI stuff. And another thing too, like if you are drinking a large quantity of fluid before or during a meal, that could also potentially decrease your pancreatic enzyme production. So even simply separating fluid from food by 10 minutes, 10 minutes before, 10 minutes after, try to avoid fluids. Obviously, I don't want to be choking on the food. So if you need to drink something during a meal, please do it. But bitters right before, separating fluid, slowing down, put the fork down in between bites. And another big one, eating, there's research to support when you eat with a community or eat with a friend or whoever, you digest better, you enjoy your food better, you have better digestion because you're intentionally slowed down because your attention is drawn to the conversation you're having or should be having. So starting back with the basics of just general digestion, how can you set your gut up for success?
I am one of the world's slowest eaters, so that's a nice built-in
You're a
perk.
rare breed.
Yeah, I'm a very slow eater. And yes, I can be a pleasure eater, but at least I do it slowly.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to, setting yourself up to become a better digester, a better eater, a lot of people are worried about, a food dyes or artificial sweeteners. And, you can't just take some bitters because all the foods are full of dyes and they're all, if they're not, they're super expensive. And I don't have money to shop at Whole Foods. Like, if people think this, please comment it. And, there's a balance to all these things. But, when you're trying to give people actionable advice, I think one big thing is learning how to have convenient foods because people do get busy, but also mostly whole foods from any grocery store.
Yeah.
Do people often ask what they can do to avoid most of these things that might be deleterious other than just doing like a toxin cleanse every month?
Yeah.
Or other than, my tricks, which is I like to shop at Aldi and sometimes Costco.
Yeah.
And try to avoid these more artificial ingredients. Yeah. Is there rules of thumb that people can take?
Yeah, I think obviously there's a lot of news with food dyes recently, especially, and some good things happening within government to try to move us in the right direction. It's important, I mentioned this earlier too, not to lose the forest through the trees and not to get so lost in the little things. We so want to point our finger at one or a handful of things that are really trendy on social media that you see within the nutrition space. Oh, you eat this or expose yourself to this and it causes this and now this happens. It's too simplified. It's oversimplified. So what I tell people is, yes, you do want to, because what happens if you're consuming a lot of food dye, that also means you're consuming a lot of high processed foods. So you're right. Like there are ways to consume convenient foods that are not straight out of a super processed box or bag. But there may be instances when you need stuff like that. If I'm working with an athlete and they're running an ultra marathon or an Ironman, I don't expect them to stop and eat chicken and rice because that's ridiculous. It's not going to help digestion at all.
What about mashed potatoes out of a squeeze?
I mean,
I've seen that.
You could potentially do that. I have seen at Costco, they have like a dried sweet potato. I know you love sweet potatoes. And that caught my attention. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd want that in an ultra marathon.
They're getting creative, but
yeah, that is creative.
I think what I tell people is if you are less active, you don't have as much room for more of the ultra processed stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're more active, if you're a trained athlete, it'd be really hard to get the calories that you need to sustain that energy level and that level of sport through whole foods alone.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing. Is like, if you're more sedentary, if you're not training daily for at least 45 minutes, then you need to be mindful of the amount of artificial stuff you're consuming, whether it contains dye or not.
Yeah. I think that's a good takeaway. One thing that people are very scared of and that does well on social media is toxins and parasites, whether it's heavy metals, whether it is, strongyloides like flatworms.
Yeah.
People are very worried about this, but, it does happen. I think something like 2% of the population these current day has them, which is 1 in 50 people, which is quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that means if you have a practice of 500 people, then 10 of them do have a parasite, and we do test for things like that for the appropriate patient. But that being said, people just want to do like a general. They message in to both of us all the time.
Yeah.
What's your general parasite cleanse, gut cleanse, heavy metal cleanse, toxin cleanse, plastic cleanse? A plastic cleanse is just sweating.
Oh yeah.
But I did finally come up with a cleanse for all those things. It's all the same.
Oh.
But it's just taking your bitters to help with digestion before your meal. And then if there's not enough fiber in the diet, which there's usually not.
Yeah.
If it's a case of slowly work your way up, use small amounts of tolerable fiber supplementation.
Yep.
And something like a NAC or TUDCA.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, for a while I was worried that I was becoming part of the problem by having a toxin cleanse, gut cleanse protocol.
Yeah.
And I still might change my mind again, but at least for now, I think just because so many people request that, they feel good that I have one.
Yes. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because like you said, if you really want to cleanse, a sustainable cleanse, you need to support the functions in your body that do the cleansing for you. So sweating, exercise, sauna, that's more of the enjoyable, actionable things you could do. Exercise is cleansing for many reasons. Get that sweat on regularly. It's harder to do as you get older. You stop moving intensely. You stop doing that stuff. And that's when things like CrossFit or Peloton workouts or whatever it might be, whatever your thing is, just do it regularly. Supporting digestion. If you have adequate stomach acid, that's your first line of defense. It'll help kill whatever should not be in there. But if you have poor stomach acid because of stress, medications, too many PPIs, whatever it might be, now you're going to have some maldigestion going downstream from there.
For people who don't need a PPI very badly, severe Barrett's esophagus or whatnot, how do you help get people off PPIs?
There is a heel drop technique that I picked up from a functional medicine provider that I like a lot, and I'll put it in the show notes. It's very easy. You can do it every day. It basically works to get gravity to help you out, and that over even a week has been shown to really help patients. It's literally what it sounds like. It's standing against a wall, standing on your toes, and dropping your heels. Do that like 10 times in a row. But I'll share that, and we share that with our patients too. And just kind of making sure that I'm supporting their digestion downstream. So I might temporarily add some digestive enzymes, work on meal composition, working on slowing them down.
Is alginate part of the protocol? Like the seaweed gummy alginate that supposedly helps gravity?
Yeah, I haven't used it personally, so I'm not sure. For me, it's not my go-to. But there are various strategies to try to get people off PPIs. But one of the most important messages there is you should not be on chronic PPIs. And if you feel like you need chronic PPIs, you're not addressing the root cause, and you need to see somebody who can really help you with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good takeaway. One thing that people complain about a lot with GERD and heartburn is that certain proteins or certain fats make it worse.
Hmm.
And a lot of times, this is one of the primary things that kind of drives a less healthy diet.
Yeah.
Is there different protein sources that people can look to? And in general, what should people maybe temporarily avoid or substitute in that
Yeah.
case?
I think that obviously you want to choose more of the leaner proteins. Be mindful of your portion of protein. If you have a large protein meal, that may be harder for your body to digest, depending on what's going on with the enzymes and your stomach acid. If you have poor stomach acid, it's going to be harder to break down that protein. If you chew and swallow big chunks of meat, again, going back to digestion, your body, you need to have adequate mastication, which is the chewing in your mouth, to start that process of breaking food down. As you swallow, it goes in your stomach, then it starts to be broken down by the acidity in your stomach before it goes into duodenum, into small intestine, so forth, so on.
Common complaint on GLP-1s because
Yeah,
they slow down that whole process.
they do. They do.
Is it different for people on GLP-1s, or what's the additional pitfalls?
I think for GLP-1s, it's important to kind of follow the same rules of digestion. Be mindful of the portions. Obviously, they're not supposed to have as large meals because things are moving slower. Then you also need to be mindful, going back to fiber, make sure they're getting adequate fiber. I think the average American consumes maybe 10 to 15 grams of fiber a day. The recommendation is 10 to 15 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories. So that's like closer to 30, 40 grams a day. Bearing in mind, our ancestors were eating about 100 grams of fiber a day.
Yep.
We get fiber from carbs. What's the most common macronutrient that's eliminated? Carbs.
Yeah.
And what's the most common bodybuilder meal? White rice, chicken, broccoli. Very, very little fiber in there.
Yeah. Chicken and broccoli, rice, and a little bit of trin on the side.
Yeah,
Maybe
little,
some
you know,
SARMs and
Yeah,
peptides.
there you go. That's a perfect
Yeah.
recipe right there.
When people are on GLP-1s and they're hopefully weaning off of them slowly,
Mm-hmm.
what can they do? Maybe some modulation of fiber in the diet.
Yeah.
But what can they do as they decrease the dose and then come off the GLP-1?
Yeah, I think ensuring that they're getting adequate nutrition throughout the process and not waiting till, okay, I'm done with the GLP-1. Now I need to start my nutrition modification, meaning, okay, now I'm going to pay attention to what I'm eating. This should be throughout the process, before, during, and after. Again, always going back to, my 3-3-3. 3 meals a day, minimum three food groups at each meal, 3 to 4 hours apart. Give yourself intentional breaks between the meals because that will help with digestion. I tell people, don't treat your gut like a conveyor belt. Don't just continue to take things in, and your gut needs to process, rest for a second, and then, okay, now I'm ready for the next thing. And that way you have adequate enzyme production, adequate insulin release, all those things that need to happen for meals to be digested and absorbed. But having high protein meals, having 5 to 10 grams of fiber per meal. We so quickly count carbs, but we don't count fiber. Fiber comes from many different sources, whether it's whole grain bread or oats or nuts and seeds or plants, fruits and vegetables. A variety of those things really is key. But first nailing down, okay, if I don't like variety, if I'm comfortable in my little box of food, I eat, broccoli every night or whatever it might be. Okay, let's try to hit your goal with what you do eat and then challenge yourself to add a new thing each week.
Yeah. For people who might be in a big caloric deficit or on a high dose of GLP-1, whatever the case may be, they say, I'm really just not having luck eating high amounts of fiber or protein.
Yeah.
Is there sources of particular quality? For example, do you prefer albumin over whey versus vegan protein versus casein?
Yeah. I love a good whey protein. There's nothing that can trump it. I mean, there are times the only time when I don't recommend whey protein is if somebody has issues with lactose or dairy in general. And then we'll go to a high quality vegan protein, ideally getting something that's third party certified. Informed choice protein is a new certification that helps to get that some protein sources are getting that helps to guarantee that what you see in the label is true, because there are protein powders that are spiked and artificially inflated through amino acids and whatnot. So buyers may not be getting what they think they're getting.
Yep.
But there's enough third-party certified whey proteins out there that are good, that taste good, that digest well. That's one of my regular things for me to help get me hit my protein goals, especially when I wake up super early in the morning. It's just easy to grab my whey protein shake and go out the door and start my day.
Yeah.
Um,
That's one reason why I like the Gorilla Mind omegas and protein,
Yeah.
regardless of knowing Derek for many years.
yeah.
I like that not only are they third party tested,
Mhm.
they actually post the results batch by batch,
Yeah.
including their omegas and their heavy metals and their
Yep.
toe tox levels, their oxidative damage to the omegas. They post all of those on their website,
Yeah.
whether they're great or whether they're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So
And we need more companies to have
everyone
that
should do that.
transparency.
Yeah,
we
because
need
why would you get third party certified and not just post your results?
Yeah.
Just post them out there.
a lot of consumers just won't take the time to look at it. But at least you could say it's there and it's a
Mhm.
reference to go back to, because that really is key. It's easier. A lot of companies don't do third party certifications because it's costs. It's an additional cost. And when you're in that kind of
Yep.
business, you're in the business to make money, right? To do what's right is not always to do what's popular.
Mhm.
But
Most third party testing is also done by the raw supplier.
mhm.
So they buy a raw ingredient and then the same company, kind of the intermediary company, does the third party testing.
Yeah.
So your company doesn't even set it up.
Yeah.
You're just slapping a different label on there and then shipping it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, not to get too off on the
Yeah.
supplementation. Another common question that I wanted to address is how there's kind of like this spike in interest in group classes, which is
Yeah.
obviously difficult to be individualized.
Yeah.
But, I was pretty against fitness group classes for a long time. And now I'm definitely on board because of some of the accountability.
Yeah.
Where's the, benefit detriment ratio of group nutrition classes?
And that's really tough. And man, you could see it's pretty obvious why group fitness classes may be beneficial. There's a big social aspect in that, and having that accountability buddy, forming a group of like-minded people. Because if you're in a group fitness class, if you pay for a CrossFit class, then everybody else there did too. And if you're doing that, you're likely going to be around people who are not spending Friday night at a bar. You're going to be spending Friday night probably in the gym together, and then maybe eat a paleo meal afterwards. But that's another story. But group nutrition classes can be beneficial in the right scenario, especially if you're an N of 1 dietitian and you have 500 plus individuals who you're responsible for. It's impossible to give one-on-one attention to every single person there.
Mhm.
So dietitians have to get really creative and potentially do group health stuff. So that is an approach that I have used in some cases, and I love doing it with like a physician's assistant or somebody like you, so we can kind of tackle multiple things at the same time. But still, it's generally like I look at it more of like a tailored class where if everybody has been identified as somebody who has high cholesterol, I would give the same spiel to every one of them. So
Mhm.
instead of me spending 10 hours doing that for 10 people, I'm going to spend 1 hour and bring 10 people together.
Yeah.
So there is a way to do it so that they feel like it's individualized. But usually like I do that and then I offer a few minutes afterwards for anybody who needs to ask me more tailored questions. And then if I identify that that person needs more, then I could do a one-on-one with them.
How often do people in group classes or regular classes
Mhm.
ask you fitness or training advice?
All the time. And that's really one of the reasons why I got my CSCS certification, was it 3 or so years ago? And I think that's another important pro tip for dietitians who are interested in sports nutrition field is to add things. And it's not to create alphabet soup behind your name. If you're gonna spend the time and energy to get something, you should use it and understand it.
Mhm.
But it does help because those questions are inevitable. Just like for any athletic trainer or strength coach, you're going to get nutrition questions
Yep.
because you're around athletes a lot more than I am probably. And it's not to say that I'm taking their role or they're taking my role. Know enough to know when to redirect. to the SME, to the expert in the room or the expert that you know of. But I want to be able to give at least bump and steer answers to somebody who could potentially be doing something dangerous, and then point them to somebody who will write them a program if that's necessary.
Yeah, I like that. What are some of the critiques that you've heard to your practice style?
Let's see. My practice style really has modified over the years, and it really depends on who I'm working with. Sometimes I'm really direct with people if I feel like I have that relationship with them and they need that type of thing. And then sometimes I'm a lot softer and I dance around things a little bit more. But I think that it is important for myself and any dietitian, anybody, to listen to the pros and cons and be able to take it, the constructive criticism, and, but not lose who you are. Like, I'm not going to necessarily change who I am if that you are who you are. If you try to be somebody fake, people will know that's not authentic.
Do you find it difficult if you think a medication or a supplement might not be the best for that patient? The process of maybe navigating, maybe not directly recommending, but how do you navigate at least bringing that up between the patient, the healthcare provider, and yourself?
Yeah. So if you were to recommend something that I'm like, Kyle, it's not a good idea.
Well, you just asked me about it.
I would just ask you.
For a random doctor, it can be, or a nurse practitioner, it can be tough.
It can be really tough, especially if I don't have a relationship with that person. Then it's kind of like the patient's pitting like mommy and daddy against each other. It's like, well, dad said this and mom said this, and I don't know who to believe. And then the patient's really frustrated and confused. Then they go ditch both of them, then find somebody else. And it's just bouncing around. They never get a clear answer. And it's a little bit of that gaslighting, we kind of talk about. But I think that what I try to do is lead with science. Here's what I know based on the science. If I don't have an answer, I will find an answer and I will give it to the patient. And then let them make the decision. I can't always influence or change that practitioner, especially if I don't know them. They don't need to listen to me. They don't need to take my phone call.
Here's one example. Patient comes in and they want fat loss. They want low calories.
Yeah.
They want to make an omelet with maybe 1 or 2 whole eggs and then egg white for the rest of it.
Yeah.
Should they be concerned with their mostly egg white omelet about biotin depletion or other nutrient depletion since it's mostly egg white?
No, you got the rest of the day to make up for that.
I'm fine with that too.
Yeah.
And then they, a lot of times, and I love that they find these studies, and they find studies that show that if you feed, an animal or probably a human pure egg white all day, especially uncooked egg white, that it can lead to nutrient depletions. But that is an interesting example of, precision nutrition.
Yeah.
And what are some of the things that, whether they're successes or it just excites you for the future about the future of nutrition recommendations?
Yeah. I think that nutrition science continues to get better and better as we have more literature supported. Like I said, the things I recommended 15 years ago have changed for me and will continue to change 15 years from now. Because we know more science. Maybe I'll get more precise with my creatine recommendation because we still don't really know the exact dose that's going to cross the blood-brain barrier. We just know it's more. But maybe we'll know that soon as just one of many examples. I think that, nutrition research is really hard to do for many reasons. It's not a big moneymaker. You can't exactly make money off a patent, off of a diet. And diets are hard to get a large group of people to stick to without any confounding variables.
Yep. Yeah. Speaking of nutrition, I think one of the first conferences that we went to or we met at, there was going to be a speaker on nutrigenomics, the genomics, basically genetics of nutrition recommendation.
Yep.
And I thought, man, this is going to be really interesting because as far as I know, this is not ready for clinical applicability. And he spoke about something completely different. He did not speak about the genetics of nutrition. That. Not even, I know there was a study out of Iceland on, carbohydrate tolerance, which was kind of interesting. But I assume at some point
Yeah.
nutrigenomics will be
Yeah.
clinically applicable, but it just seems so far away.
I think we're getting there. I really do. And that's part of actually the functional nutrition training that I'm going through is there is a section on nutrigenomics and gene expression and how, obviously nature nurture, that kind of argument. I don't think that
Daily epigenetic tests
Yeah,
are
it
starting to
doesn't
get a little bit better.
Yeah, it hasn't changed my practice yet because not many people have access to something like that. Like if you're going to do that level of testing, you're going to have to pay a little bit of money for that. Insurance surely is not going to cover that. Not anytime soon.
And it's difficult to vet the validity of the test as well.
Yeah, and you're giving your genetics out there. So whether you want to do that or not, it's out there. So I think that that's going to be one of the newer frontiers, especially branching out of the functional nutrition space, that you're going to see more about probably in the next decade, maybe sooner.
Yeah, that will be interesting. What about apps and continuous monitors of various things, not just glucose, but ketones, alcohol, lactate? What do you see with that in the next, not even 10 years, but 3 to 5 years?
I would love to see more CGMs, continuous glucose monitors. I think that, we've talked about it. I've worn one for about a month. I got to trial one. I thought it was super interesting. Even for me, like I know what the science says. I know what literature says about how my blood sugar should respond to meals. But when you see it in real time, you're like, oh, wow, like that's an expected response, or that's not what I expected. When I had pizza one night, it had chicken, it had cheese on it, but my blood sugar spiked up to 200.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that didn't scare me. That was an expected response. But I think with great power comes great responsibility, right?
You don't have to be scared with every blood sugar over 140.
I have patients who have tried CGMs and then don't know how to interpret the results, and they freak out when they see the blood sugar go up. And I have to walk them back and provide that context behind what it means. So I think if anybody's doing any kind of wearable, first of all, make sure that you have the right context and education to interpret the results, or at least have access to somebody who will interpret the results. What I don't want to happen is, some of these sleep monitors that people wear, like Whoop or Oura Ring, whatever, it actually ends up working against them in many ways because now they're over analyzing or more worried about it saying, oh, your readiness score is down, or your HRV is down, or it's just like this doomsday. And when you are going through a stressful period, or when you're, whatever's happening in your life and your sleep is not great, you don't want that daily reminder that, man, my sleep sucks. Like it just makes things that much worse for that person. Yeah. And then it's not worth it anymore.
Yeah. I think that there's some truth to that if you applied it to people's thinking about their weight as well. So people can certainly perseverate on that. One thing we spoke about in the other podcast, which I'm sure we'll have linked below as well, is artificial sweeteners in general. But a lot of people ask us, well, is monk fruit better than allulose, better than xylitol, better than stevia, better than aspartame, better than erythritol, better than just regular sugar, better than honey, better than agave nectar? And how worried do you have to be about, glycemic indexes or sweetness of your high fructose corn syrup? What's some good general advice and takeaways that the average person can utilize?
I think along with having regular sugar, you do want to make sure you're not overdoing the artificial sugar. So if you're adding, Splenda or aspartame, whatever it might be, to your morning coffee, and then you're having diet sodas, and then you're doing diet foods or whatever it is. So you're eating it, you're drinking it. It can add up. And what can happen is that it can also lead to some GI issues. So if you're having GI issues and you're consuming a lot of artificial sweeteners, that could be one of the reasons. And again, this is when you dive into one-on-one with somebody and identify, there are lots of reasons why people have GI issues. That could be one of them, potentially. So just for me, my routine is coffee in the morning with stevia. I like stevia. I think it's a good option. And I do occasionally do diet sodas, and you know what? It is what it is. But I am monitoring how much my overall consumption is. And I make sure I have adequate fiber to clear things out of my body, to make sure I'm hydrated, make sure I'm not replacing water with XYZ diet beverage or whatever.
Do you like those Olipop drinks? Because they're basically just fiber drinks, right?
Yeah.
They're not sugary at all.
I actually haven't had one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't had one, so
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think that
They have a little sugar in them.
yeah. And
People like to demonize them or say that they're completely healthy, but it's kind of somewhere in between.
just like most things, right? And even stuff like allulose. You don't see a lot of foods with allulose yet because it can lead to some stomach issues. But it is something that could potentially help moderate your blood sugar with a meal. But also things that can also help blood sugar with a meal is starting your meal with your protein first, or maybe going for a walk after you eat a meal.
I like both of those.
Yeah.
And I usually still do have 5 to 10 grams of allulose.
Yeah.
I have the chocolate syrup with organic allulose every evening.
Nice.
Well, not every evening, but most evenings. Anytime I have a Ninja Creamy with protein.
Have you worn a CGM when you have consumed your allulose?
I have, but my glucoses are usually relatively low unless I consume high amounts of liquid calories.
Yeah.
If I have a juice or a drink with a bunch of calories, then my glucose will spike up.
Yeah.
As expected.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that the new artificial fat, the EFG, whatever it's called, it's like the kinked. I always call it fake fat because when I call it fake fat, we get comments, which is good. It's real fat with a kinked tail.
Yeah.
I think that'll be interesting because if you look at the studies on early non-nutritive sweeteners, again, regardless if they're natural or artificial, then they also looked pretty magical, and we thought this is it. This is going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
It's going to solve the obesity crisis.
Problem,
Same as we thought when GLP-1s came along too. So interesting that hasn't solved the obesity crisis despite almost half of Americans trying one, which many experts agree with that number, as there's data that collaborates with that, but somewhere between a third and a half anyway. Many of them only one time. And that's a conversation for a different day probably, but it's pretty hard to make a prediction what will happen. We at least know it's tolerated better than eating real fat with orlistat, which is kind of the same process because you do stool it out.
Oh yeah. Well, I remember that.
Yeah.
The Pringles chips.
Yeah. And of course they have like delayed release orlistat and like microdosed orlistat. But no, it definitely kind of reminds me of that. And if you eat enough of it, I think you can certainly get GI symptoms, but a few grams is reasonable per day. Even if it's an overpriced protein bar or whatnot, it's fantastic macros.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just going to get more and more common, like artificial sweeteners. But I think that a reasonable limit for that, at least for my personal self, is one product with the fake fat EFG in it per day. And about 10 grams. And I prefer allulose, xylitol, and monk fruit. And sometimes stevia.
Yeah. I think that that's a good rhythm. And a lot of people ask, like you mentioned honey too, like, oh, is honey better for you? Like calorie for calorie is going to be about the same, like sugar. It's all going to have about the same calories, 4 calories per gram. And if you're consuming honey because that's your one of few antioxidants that you're consuming throughout the day, like we need to improve your antioxidant ratio in your diet and not just rely on honey, a tiny bit of honey in your beverage or whatever it might be. Honey's fine. Like I enjoy honey too, but I don't look at honey and say, this is a good, healthy nutrition choice. I look at it like, oh, I like the taste of this. I think this will go well with this.
Yeah. It's cope for people who want to eat animal-based products.
Yeah.
Because honey is animal-based.
Yeah. Bees.
Is there a reason to go on such a restrictive diet, something like a carnivore diet?
Yeah.
Or even a Whole30 diet? That's pretty restrictive too. When's a reasonable time to hyper restrict similar to that?
Yeah. I think a lot of people are drawn towards restrictive diets because they're, dare I say, easy to follow. It's like, here are my rules. Don't break the rules. People like rules, whether you admit it or not, because they're just easier to understand, as opposed to, oh, just eat until you're full. Like that, it's hard to do. In most cases, most people don't need those diets because that could lead down the road of disordered eating, body dysmorphia, potentially risking micronutrient deficiencies, just oversimplification nutrition, not meeting your fiber goals to support your gut health, because your microbiota are highly modifiable. You could change if you change your diet within 24 hours, your gut microbiome is going to change.
Yep.
For better or worse. So there may be times when I would put somebody on more of a paleo-ish or maybe a low FODMAP diet or some kind of elimination diet if they're symptomatic. And if that thing, just like a medication takes away the symptoms, a diet can also do the same thing. But I would never, like in a group setting or a class, globally advise you all in this room need X elimination diet, or you need the carnivore diet, whatever, because there are risks to that.
If someone has symptoms, if they react to FODMAPs and they can't tolerate them, whether it's SIBO or something else, is there a general way to add those FODMAPs back into the diet?
Yeah. So you have to eliminate those foods for 28 days at least, in like full elimination. And when you add them back in, and this is when you really have to make sure that the person is really fully understanding of what they're doing, because it's going to take time. This is not something I can fix within a week. And there may be also a course of antibiotics, which is helpful when a dietitian and physician work together, because you may need both to help specifically target specifically what's happening, as opposed to using some broad scope herbal remedy, which may or may not be effective. Sometimes you just need to get it done.
Other than SIBO, when people find the actual cause of their IBS, what are the other common things that pop up other than SIBO?
Other than SIBO, a lot of times IBS is gut-brain connection. So make sure that person is looped in with potentially an appropriate counselor. And it's not me trying to gaslight and say, oh, it's all in your head. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a direct line from your brain to your gut and vice versa through the vagus nerve. And if there's dysregulation, if there's TBI history, if there's anything going on, that can activate. It's almost like a call center in headquarters is how I look at it. Like the call center is taking information from the nutrition, the environment, what's happening in your life, and then updating the headquarters. Hey, things are all good. Things are calm. But as soon as diet changes, stress increases, chemicals, whatever it might be, now you're starting to send distress signals to the call center. And that's when we start to have this gut-brain issue, leaky gut, which you guys may be hearing more and more about.
Leaky brain.
Yeah, leaky gut, leaky brain. And those could take time in a multidisciplinary team to fix. And going back into how do you add foods back in, firstly, carefully and with a practitioner, hopefully, but you really need to add it back in like one at a time. Like I'm talking, if you're adding eggs back in, add one whole egg and then leave it alone for like 3 days and make sure that you're not symptomatic. And you can kind of slowly progress with that with each food group and start with its most whole form and find your tolerable limit. Like you may not be able to tolerate a glass of milk, but you may be able to handle some hard cheeses or a Greek yogurt in the morning without symptoms.
Or a tiny bit of colostrum.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the same case with medications and supplements. Often they can cause IBS symptoms, whether it's a bunch of magnesium or medication or whatever else. And then, working with the healthcare provider or the prescriber to potentially pause those for a while and then slowly add them back in. I've noticed that it seems like 99% of people who get a functional medicine provider with gut symptoms get diagnosed with either some sort of heavy metal toxicity or mast cell. Like they say it's like histamine intolerance.
Yeah.
Which of course I have. I have atopy. I have a bit of asthma, some allergies.
Yeah.
And I'm very histaminergic whenever I have a skin response.
Yeah.
And sometimes I take some histamine control supplements.
Yeah.
But in my experience, 99% of the time, there's some other diagnosis that's leading to this
Yeah.
histamine sensitivity. So I'm not going to argue that they have histamine sensitivity or mast cell, but
Yeah.
is it really because their mast cells are hyperproliferative and that was the root cause?
Yeah.
And I obviously have a lot of things that I kind of see, but in your practice, what do you see as kind of like the comorbidities, if you will, which is
Yeah.
just really kind of the root cause of the secondary mast cell diagnosis?
Yeah. Comorbidities. IBS is such a blanket term for I don't know what this is.
Same thing for mast cell, I'd argue.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like almost no better than IBS.
Yeah. And that's when like it's a lot of the people I see have so many different things going on. They have history of TBI. They have had bone injuries. They've played sports. They're exposed to toxins, dirty water, dirty air. There may be some heavy metals in there. Whatever it might be.
NSAIDs, gastritis.
Yeah,
H.
over
pylori
medication.
exposure.
Yeah, everything. You name it, they got it. I always try to reel it back and start with their most problematic area. Maybe if they have head and gut stuff going on, but the gut's really bothering them, it's really impacting their day the most, obviously, because you need to poop every day. And if you're not, then you need to. Start there. And once you start treating something like that, then the rest will start to kind of slowly follow. But it's, again, I always go back to I end up going back to the basic stuff. I have conversations about this with, the handful of colleagues that I, will call about cases like this, where it's like, man, after all the functional nutrition stuff that we know, I still feel like I'm doing the basics, meaning I'm not jumping to whatever detox or whatever parasite cleanse you're doing.
Neomycin. And,
no, like,
yeah.
I need you just to chew your food. I need you to slow down. I need you, let's try to wean you off these painkillers that are causing your gut permeability. Let's support that. Let's make sure you're talking to the right
NSAIDs.
person.
That sounds hard.
And again, like
I just want an anti-parasite.
I know. And again, like when you work in sports, athletes will pop NSAIDs like it's I don't know, a mint. But you have to understand, like show them there are better ways. Show them there are ways to get what they achieve the goal they're looking for without those side effects, which can cause more issues than they intended to cause.
We have a lot of patients on LDN, low dose naltrexone, which the way I explain it, at least in the gut, is it does the opposite thing as gluten, and it does the opposite thing as loperamide, which is Imodium. So kind of helps squeeze the tube of toothpaste in an organized fashion rather than randomly. That can cause a lot of distress.
Yes.
But, it's kind of hard to explain what specifically that is for other than potentially improved absorption. I think it stacks quite nicely with very low dose GLP-1s.
Yeah.
It's no secret that most of the patients that we see that are on GLP-1s are on very low doses because you get most benefit without a lot of the side effects.
Yeah.
But a lot of people say, oh yeah, the LDN, cured my malabsorption or my leaky gut.
Yeah.
And it did help.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say that GLP-1 cured the histamine intolerance or the mast cell, which I think is interesting because did it really just kind of improve the microbial environment?
Yeah.
Did it improve the absorption?
Maybe their blood sugar regulation.
Yeah, the insulin resistance and blood sugar. And in each case, it probably improved something different. But I've noticed that now there's clinics where, as part of the price of signing up, you either get your LDN or your GLP-1, which, it's kind of tough because we're obviously a fan of those medications. Yeah. Is there a common theme or advice that you could give to people about, like, other than just signing up for Gillett Health or whatnot? How can they know if they would be a good candidate or a poor candidate, or how could they know if something like that might help them?
Yeah. I mean, like I said a second ago, it's important to make sure you're having a bowel movement every day. And then what is that on the range of this Bristol stool scale, which you guys could Google that. It's everywhere. where do you fall?
Mhm.
If you're chronically constipated, that could increase risk of SIBO. If you're, meaning you're, whatever the, you can look at the chart, see what it looks like. But if it's days between bowel movements, that's
Mhm.
increasing risk of SIBO.
Yeah.
It's almost like, one of my mentors calls it feeding the cats in the wrong neighborhood, where
Yeah.
more of the bacteria are kind of seeping into the small intestine, kind of fermenting where they shouldn't be, causing all the symptoms you don't like.
The wrong fish food in the fish tank.
That's right.
You got to drain the fish tank enough.
Drain the fish tank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to um, or I guess guidelines, I have heard that it is normal for a female
Mhm.
to not have a bowel movement every day. It's considered normal if you have 3 per week. But for a male, it's not. How did they come up with that?
I have no idea. I would disagree wholeheartedly that is not okay. And obviously, like, bowel movements can change, especially during a woman's menstrual cycle. That can influence your hormones, could influence your bowel movements a little bit during that time. But the same rule of thumb still applies. You still need to have bowel movement like once a day. And you'll know if you're in a good circadian rhythm if it's around the same time of day. You can actually train your body to do that. It takes time. Like if you're like, hey, I really want to have bowel movement at 8:30 a.m., like that just works for my schedule. If you go sit on the potty, sit on the toilet. I have kids. Sorry, guys. Sit on the toilet at 8:30 a.m. every day. And you might be able to do that. And also, like, a little bit of magnesium citrate the night before may also stimulate that morning bowel movement. But you shouldn't rely on magnesium for a bowel movement. And if you do rely on magnesium or medication to have a bowel movement, then we need to adjust why you're not having a bowel movement to begin with.
Presumably you should rely on exercise and food.
Exercise and food, meal composition, fiber composition would be great. Great place to start.
If you have the diet dialed in, but not exercise whatsoever, how big of a difference can exercise make with your bowel regularity and movements?
Oh, huge, huge difference. Some people notice that just getting that movement helps. Bearing in mind that if you're doing intense exercise that pulls the blood away from the gut to fuel and supply oxygen to the working muscle. And sometimes that can cause issues for endurance runners or runners in general. Anybody that has that kind of mechanical stress on the gut, that's when they kind of talk about their leaky guts. But that goes into your circadian rhythm and helping to train your body. Hey, if I work out every morning, I'm going to have a bowel movement afterwards. Just get the blood flowing.
What about people who either before or after or during exercise, but especially before or after, have dysphoria, like, the gut endotoxin release perhaps, or heartburn, or just GI distress?
Yeah. I like to, and this is when the blend of nutrition and supplements comes in handy. For intense trainers, I like to recommend glutamine to help protect that gut lining, among other things. Maybe a really good quality probiotic. Probiotics, you can't just throw a probiotic at anything because there's now enough research to show that there are specific strains that do specific things, whether it's for depression or ulcerative colitis or whatever condition. There may be certain strains that are better than others. If you're on an antibiotic, there are certain strains that you want to take as opposed to others. But I think that making sure that you are be mindful of what kind of foods you're consuming during and before the exercise. A lot of people will try to avoid food before training because it makes them nauseous. Guess what? An empty stomach will also make you nauseous.
Yeah.
So that's not helping you either. So you have to train your body to get used to having something in it if you want to train well.
Yeah. And I think there's, again, with both supplements and medication, I think there's merit to getting yourself back into a state of homeostasis.
Yeah.
And then cruising on from there.
Yeah.
Restarting the wave pool, if you will.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you can train yourself with bowel movements. I've noticed with my 2 older kids, they like to go after I've put them to bed when nothing else will get them out of the room. So any tips for training them to go before their bedtime?
Gosh, it's funny for my kids. It's almost a joke. Like they have synced up their bowel movements. Sorry, kids, if you listen to this when you're older. They poop at like the same time together. I'm like, oh, Maddie's in the bathroom. Oh, Maverick's upstairs. Okay, I know what they're doing. I think that the same things that would apply to adults apply to kids is making sure, like, the basic things. Are you in the right position? A squatty potty might help if they're really kind of backed up or really struggling to get it going. Make sure they're not sitting on the toilet for a long time, just like doodling on their phone or whatever, because that's not healthy either.
What if they just they don't have phones or an iPad,
yeah.
but what about a book?
Ooh.
Like a construction book?
Perhaps, but again, I wouldn't want them sitting there and relaxing for that reason. I want them to be on the toilet for purpose and then get off of it. So it trains their colon, hey, when I'm here, this is what I need to do, and then I'm done. Sometimes if you're backed up, I'll use even something like manual massages or a warm bath could be beneficial for little kids. Making sure they're getting adequate fiber, make sure they're getting adequate fluids.
Yep, definitely. That's
fluids
huge.
is a big deal for kids.
Yep. Watch the bananas.
Yeah.
Yep. Watch the milk, even if they're chronically constipated.
Yeah.
Lots of benefit. But
oh yeah, my son is big on. He's my dairy kid. He loves his dairy, and we're like having to pull back. Okay, Mav, that's enough. That's enough yogurt.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
For athletes that are fueling kind of through a competition, both from like a blood glucose standpoint and from a prevention of headaches, and you mentioned nausea, which made me think of this. Yeah. Nausea, lightheadedness, dizziness. It's very common for people to feel hypoglycemic, even if they're not hypoglycemic.
Yeah.
But is there certain tips that people can take? Because what I notice a lot of people doing, maybe in between the CrossFit competitions that Maddie and I do, is it's just basically pure carbs, gummy bears, etc.
Yeah.
And some people really are scared of having a higher fat meal.
Yeah.
Should they be less scared of that? And what strategies can they employ?
If you're doing a competition that's going to span time, like more than 60 minutes, it may be beneficial to have something that has just a little bit of fiber on board. So I really like using stuff like the Fig Bar, something that's still simple sugars, but is going to give you a little bit of fiber on board. Can help to keep that blood sugar stable. If you're doing low level activity for less than 60 minutes and you're really not getting your heart rate into zone 2 or anything like that, then you're fine. If you want to do that in the morning, fasted, whatever, if that's what you really enjoy doing. But if your purpose is performance and the intensity ramps up, you're going to need to prepare for that, whether it's eating something 30 minutes before and then having a snack sometime during if necessary. So in the military, if you're doing like a long ruck march, those could take 2+ hours. You need to plan that out. You can't just like step off that morning and just go, because it's not going to go well.
I did a ruck relay. So I forget how much weight was in the ruck, but you ran 1.5 miles, basically once an hour for 9 hours.
Yeah.
So during this, I had 4 or 5 half-pound hamburgers or cheeseburgers.
God.
And I was so hungry running these laps.
Yeah.
I think one lap took between, like 11 and 14 minutes.
Yeah.
But I was extremely hungry, and somehow I digested that perfectly fine, and a whole bunch of other junk too.
Yeah.
And multiple energy drinks, unfortunately.
Yeah. All the things that I would say not to do.
Yeah. Is that just because I was extremely hungry?
Yeah.
Or is that because I did have probably 45 minutes of downtime in between?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good chunk of time between. And obviously when you say hamburger, my brain's going to go to, it was probably a fatty piece of meat.
Very fatty.
Like at least an 80-20, meaning 80% lean, 20% fat. Probably just a white hamburger bun, minimal toppings on top. So
Tabasco sauce.
At least with that, man, just everything. Hot sauce, man, red flag. So at least with that, like you had semi-adequate time to kind of digest that. Bear in mind, if you're doing exercise, kind of the rule of thumb is no meals 3 hours before said exercise to allow proper digestion and emptying. And then just within that hour before, then you want to go for like simple sugars like goos or chews or fruits or something that is not going to take too long to digest. But with that, you had protein on board. albeit fatty protein. But that helped to fill you up and helped to fuel you over that 9-hour period. Then you had some simple carbs from the bun, which I wouldn't argue that at all.
Yeah.
So composition wise, it might be higher fat than what I would recommend for in the middle of an event. But, if you're in good health and you have no gut issues, you could probably stomach that literally a little bit better than maybe somebody who has not prepared at all for that.
Yeah, I could see that. What about supplements before exercise? Because I remember posting about electrolytes, and of course, everyone these days has an electrolyte product that they're promoting.
Yeah.
Paid to promote.
Yeah.
And salt is cheap, so you can go to Amazon and buy Morton's light salt that has half potassium chloride, half sodium chloride. And I'm not against all these various electrolyte blends. I just don't think that they're particularly good value. I do buy them.
Yeah.
But I think I posted you can take half a teaspoon of half Morton's light salt and half regular salt and throw that in your protein shake. Because I do this before exercise.
Yeah.
But I also understand that especially as you lift the weights and resistance training, you break down some muscle and you have a transient high potassium in your bloodstream.
Yeah.
So I guess how dangerous is it to take electrolytes that even have a tiny bit of potassium?
Yeah.
And then do you think people in general are just better off buying electrolytes, or if they're knowledgeable enough, maybe mixing their own?
This is one of the more common questions I get is how many of these electrolyte packets, insert name, can I have in a day?
Yeah.
My favorite answer is it depends. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think that they're everywhere. You can't go into any store without seeing at least 3 different varieties. And they definitely have their place, because if you're an athlete and you're doing what you did for 9 hours or a ruck march or a football game or whatever it might be, and especially if you're a heavy sweater, you need to balance that fluid going in with more than just water. Otherwise, you're just going to secondarily dehydrate yourself by needing to pee more to try to balance that blood volume. But you're right. You could absolutely make your own sports drink. It's just that's more time and effort that people don't want to give. And I think that the most important electrolyte that people need to be concerned about during intense exercise is sodium. That is, sodium chloride is the majority of what you're going to lose through sweat. And then there's that, and then there's a big gap, and then there's magnesium, calcium, iron, blah, blah, blah. Those are much, much, much smaller. You should and can, that includes potassium too, get those through diet. However, we know that at least half of our population is deficient potassium. Why is that? We don't eat enough fruits and vegetables, you guys. We need grains. If you are cutting carbs, you're cutting these essential electrolytes as well. You might not be getting enough magnesium.
Isn't a potato a good source of potassium too?
There's a lot of good sources of potassium. Nuts and seeds and whole grains and, again, a variety of vegetables. This is when variety is really important. So you're not sticking within the same 4 foods every day, rinse and repeat.
If it's a 0-calorie electrolyte packet, of course it's sweetened and has some sort of taste in it.
Yep.
Is that sweet, non-nutritive sweetener and or taste going to significantly dehydrate you?
No, I mean, and honestly, if you're exercising, and your goal is performance, I want you to consume actual sugar in that, because that sugar is going to help draw in the sodium. It's going to help hydrate you better, and it's going to give you the carbs that your body craves if you're training for that long and that hard. So one of the true reasons why certain sports drinks are successful is not because of the electrolytes they supply. We know that they're not supplying enough electrolytes. Is because of the sugar. This is when we don't want to shy away from sugar. We can avoid sugar in other places, but during training, I tell people, don't sacrifice your training for your nutrition. This should support it. So I think that mostly electrolyte packets that you see are 0 sugar. But in most cases, people could hydrate just fine through nutrition and water. But at the same time, people are more likely to drink something if it tastes good. So half the reason why they're successful is because it just gives you an encouragement to want to drink more.
Well, I will keep taking my table salt and putting a pinch into my protein shake in the morning. That's one
Yeah.
thing a lot of people ask me as well. I'm sure they ask you is, do they need to have some sort of carbohydrate or sugar before
Mhm.
even their easy recovery
Yeah.
day for like mobility or easy zone 2 cardio, even zone 1 cardio?
Yeah.
And I tell them I don't, but a lot of times I do like to have something in my stomach
Yeah.
before I go to the gym
Yeah.
at 5 or 6 a.m. to train.
Yeah.
And I just do some protein and I put a little
Mhm.
table salt in it.
Yeah. I am along the same lines as well. You don't need to force carbs down. My kind of general rule is like if it's 60 minutes or less or low intensity, I'm not worried about you forcing something down your throat if you don't want it. If you wake up hungry, eat something.
Yep.
But if you're not hungry, just hydrate. Just hydrate, do your thing, have a good high protein breakfast when you're
Mhm.
done. That applies to almost anybody.
Yep. I just wake up and I have my coffee and bourbon in it just to hydrate.
There you go. Start the day
But
right.
yeah, that is a good rule of thumb though.
Yeah.
Any other actionable takeaways that you're seeing just often missed in athletes in regard to nutrition?
Yeah. I think it's important for women to make sure you're consuming enough protein. And I would even encourage women to, instead of a pre workout, go for essential amino acids before you train, especially if you're entering like perimenopause, menopause phase. I think protein really is key in helping to reduce sarcopenia, which is muscle loss, which can and will likely happen, especially if you're not training regularly.
Yep.
That is your insurance on your future, is protecting that muscle. So I think making sure that you're not dismissing the fueling before, during, or after your training session, especially if you're a female.
Yeah, I think that's a good takeaway. A lot of people could be adding EAAs to their intro workout.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
And not everyone needs a special
Mm-hmm.
tailor-made pre-intro
No.
workout either. So
Yeah.
that is good. I know we've talked about this before, but recently Maddie and I have done a lot of group fitness classes, partly for the social aspect, partly for the accountability, partly because the gyms that have those
Yeah.
tend to have childcare.
Yeah.
But you know, I know you talked about group nutrition classes before, but how much effect? It's obviously a decent amount, but how much effect can you have between both your family and your friend group, whether it's your gym friends
Yeah.
or work friends? How does that affect what you're eating on a daily basis? And whether if you're in a good situation, then
Yeah.
great, right?
Yeah.
But how can you kind of make the best out of a potentially not
Yeah.
ideal situation?
Gosh, it affects everything. What's that? I'm sure you've heard it. You are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You know, there's something like that. I don't know who started that, but it really is true if you think about it. If you're around people who care about their fitness and care about health and have those values that you want to strive for or already have, maybe you're more likely to follow through with it. But, you know, this is when if I'm working with a patient and they don't have that support at home, it's a 50-50 shot if they're going to be able to follow through, because they don't have, maybe they're not the one who does the grocery shopping. Maybe they're not the one cooking the meal. Maybe their spouse is on some other diet that's completely contradictory to what I'm recommending for you.
Yeah.
And that's when I had to take it slower with them and try to find the middle ground without causing more of a fight. Like, I'm not trying to cause any issues there. It's about supporting the patient and finding another community where they can get the support that they desperately need. Because we're humans, all humans, whether you're introvert, extrovert, you need people. And if you surround yourself with people who have the same goals that you want to strive for, then you're much more likely to be consistent with it.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great takeaway.
Yeah.
And you're obviously a wealth of knowledge, but I think that's a good time to end it for today.
Yeah.
If anybody has thoughts or if they agree or disagree, please comment, because again, that is always good for the algorithm. And with any other questions, hopefully we'll have many episodes in the future to where we can bust some nutrition myths and also just provide some actionable items. Because at the end of the day, that's what helps people, is not, crushing the trendy myth. It's actually giving people tools to take away situations that actually come up in both of our lives.
Yeah.
So as always, thank you to the audience for their time, and may God bless you with health and happiness.